What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. Welcome back to another edition of the Morning View. Oh, another week is here, and I tell you what, it's freezing this morning. I woke up, I checked out my watch, I got my little weather thing on there. It's 3 degrees. 3 degrees. I had to turn on the heating. I had to cave. Yesterday, it was a little bit chilly, but I thought, do I want to turn on the heating? I had to whack it straight on this morning. Oh my God, it's freezing. So, yes, hope everyone's doing very well. Let me know where you're watching from this morning as well. Is it cold where you are? But I'm not complaining too much because I love this time of year. I love when we get into the autumnal winter moments. I love when the temperature goes down. I'm not a heat guy. I'm a cold guy. So, I don't mind it. I don't. So, hope everyone's doing very well. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Hope everyone has got a good week ahead. Look, there's plenty to get into, and it's a big week in the history of Manchester United. It can't be overstated at all, just how big this week is. I mean, by the end of this week, we could have a new minority owner of Manchester United in Ineos, headed up by Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and we could have the beginning of a major sporting overhaul at the club as well, which is what we're going to get into this morning. You can see it beneath me right there. Jim Ratcliffe, United sporting plans revealed, because there's a big article this morning from The Athletic, from Laurie Whitwell et al., who are talking about the plans that are seemingly being drafted up by Ineos, by Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as part of this deal to overpay to purchase 25% of Manchester United, and whether or not the Glazers are going to accept these radical changes. We've also got a little bit of an update as to the offence taken by the Glazer family when Sheikh, Jassim and the 9-2 Foundation talked about wiping the debt and restoring Manchester United to the former glory that the club once held. How dare they? How dare they say such a terrible thing when the Glazers still own the club? So I'll be chatting about that. We'll be chatting about the vote that's expected Thursday. Of all the things for KG the comedian to get correct, it was the Thursday. He has said Thursday all over again. And it looks like, actually, what date is it going to be announced, or going to be voted on rather, that Jim Ratcliffe can acquire 25% of Manchester United? What date is it going to be maybe confirmed that Ineos have secured 25% of Manchester United? Bloody Thursday. It's just KG. It's just, I blame him. You know, we talk about the flex judge. You know, the KG judge has come back to bite us firmly in the behind, hasn't it, this week? It's just Thursday. Unbelievable. We'll also talk a little bit about some stadium plans as well. Also an update on Manchester United reportedly upping security for the next home games as well, as they're anticipating a big reaction, obviously, to the news that has come out in the last few days too. So, yes. What are people saying? Where is everyone this morning as well? Let me have a look here in the chat. I can see someone saying in Salford it's crisp. Captain Caveman says Inverness. I bet that is. I bet that is very, very crisp. All the way up in Scotland. You've got Roger, he's in Belfast, Northern Ireland as well. Muhammad says it's freezing in Melbourne. Isn't it meant to be like, well, it's like the opposite, isn't it? So what is that? If it's like the autumn, isn't that like spring? Spring, but still cold, I guess. You know, Love's in the North Pole, so anticipated that it would be quite chilly there as well. I'm surprised you got the Wi-Fi. Surprised you got the internet. Very, not bad going, but it would be cold. I mean, but you never know. With the way that, the weather changes, it might be something like, actually, it's quite warm there as well. JJNN says, too hot in Perth as well. Axel says Qatar. Yeah. Jay Blackman says London. Cold everywhere at the moment. Nevertheless, you haven't come for weather view, so be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Let's get into these changes, because there's quite a lot of changes, seemingly, if Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe get their way. And it begins with this vote that's scheduled to take place Thursday this coming week. So Laura Whitwell from The Athletic is writing that Manchester United's board is set to meet this week after British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe moved closer to securing a minority stake in the club. The 12-strong board needs to vote on selling a 25% stake to Ratcliffe, but a deal must be first finalised with the owners, the Glazer family, after Sheikh Jassim's Qatari group claimed to have withdrawn from the race. Now, sources close to Ineos and the club, granted anonymity because they were not permitted to speak publicly, told The Athletic on Saturday that a deal in principle had been agreed, subject to ratification, which is something that we spoke about. Now, again, what they mean by a deal in principle, maybe that means that these finer details and these finer things haven't still been fully fleshed out. Maybe that's what we're going to be seeing within the next, 3 or 4 days. By the time that vote comes around, one would think that all of those finer details regarding Ineos having complete control of the sporting side of things, maybe a roadmap to a full buyout in whenever that may be, that would be fleshed out. All of those questions that are very valid questions, and I still have a ton of them. I mean, there are still so many questions involved in all this. We could do an hour-long stream and I could just speak in questions. I had a manager when I was younger. When I used to play football, there was a manager who only spoke to the players. I'm not even exaggerating this. He only spoke to the players from the sideline on a match day in rhetorical questions. It was one of the most bizarre things I still think to this day that I've ever seen in my life. He would just say, "Can we? One more? Do we think we can score another goal? Do we have it in us to go again?" And you're going, why is everything you say, why has it got a question mark at the end of it? Honestly, and I'm not even making that up. That is genuinely true. Can we? Can we what? One more what? One more what are you talking about with the one more? It's absolutely bizarre. Forgot where I was going with that. The days ahead could finally be pivotal, though, for Manchester United through a drawn-out process has taught us that where United and the Glazers are concerned, nothing is certain. So they then go into what is known and not known about this vote. Who will decide the club's immediate future? When and where is this meeting taking place? What are the finer details? And I guess most importantly, what does Sir Jim Ratcliffe want to do at Manchester United? What is he even able to do with 25% of the club? So this board meeting is scheduled to take place on Thursday. Although the final details of Ratcliffe's bid must be first agreed with the 6 Glazer siblings, who would then put it to a vote. Which is what I was mentioning previously, that the problem is here too, is that the aim is to vote on it on Thursday, but a lot of those questions that we have, a lot of those questions about how can you have 25% of the club but have complete autonomy or complete control over sporting matters? How are you going to have that written down in black and white on paper? Are you going to have this roadmap to, we own 25%, but by this date, by this year, we want to have 100%? Where is the money coming from? Is there pledged investment into the club? Yes, you've purchased 25% for 1.5 billion. That's going to the Glazers, who you're buying shares off of. That's going to minority shareholders, which you're buying shares off of. But where is the pledged investment? What are the plans moving forward? What's going on with the stadium? Is it just going to be you that bankrolls the stadium? What's JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs? How are they involved in all of this? All of these questions that we all have, they all have to be answered, or at least at the very least figured out by Thursday. So that's when the vote is planned for. But to be honest, if we get to Thursday and nothing happens, would we be surprised? No. Because we've waited a year anyway, only to end up with lots of people angry and lots of people frustrated and realistically feeling like we were in the same situation anyway, and that's part of the problem. So, again, that's when it's scheduled to take place. Whether or not it does take place, we'll have to wait and see. They also go on to say that board members have previously been able to dial in remotely, allowing those in Manchester, Washington and Tampa to avoid transatlantic flights, because that would cost an arm and a leg. When it comes to the Glazers, was it $250k a piece with the private jets? But it's expected the same will happen again. But this is where it gets really interesting, is to the sporting decision, the sporting overhaul that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is looking for, and specifically who he would be looking to bring in. Who he'd be looking to replace as well. So Ratcliffe wants control of sporting decisions immediately and is proposing a new structure where INEOS representatives will have seats on the board, thus granting definitive influence on such matters. But the exact nature of this arrangement still needs to be worked out. Now, to me, that paragraph is key. That paragraph, I think, says, I think it's very eye-opening what is being said there. So the way that Sir Jim Ratcliffe feels that they will have sporting control or have control over sporting decisions at the club is by having INEOS representatives on the board of directors. Therefore, if it came to a vote, I guess they could vote on certain sporting decisions, i.e. transfers, i.e. managers, i.e. sporting executive appointments, etc., etc. But still to me, I don't see how that can work. How you can say, hey, we've got full control over, let's say they want to bring in a new sporting director. Okay, that's our decision. But if the Glazers are still majority owners and still have majority voting power, then they could still be able, hypothetically, to overrule Jim Ratcliffe, INEOS, and any of those board of directors at any point. So you've got that hierarchy, you've got that structure there of them going, yeah, you're in complete control over the sporting decisions, but you're not really. You're not really, because at any point, if it gets to a point, if I fall out with you, if it gets to a point where I disagree with the decision that you're putting in, if it gets to any point like that, I can just say no, because it's still my club. I'm still majority owner. I've still got majority voting power. And it just feels like, to me, when you've got these kind of splits in there of splits and promises and percentages, it feels like, again, a game of Succession. You know, are we assuming that everyone at Manchester United is going to be on the same page all the time? You know, that has to be a concern as well. Why wouldn't that be a concern? But that's the way that apparently Jim Ratcliffe wants to do it. The way he wants to do it, the way he wants to have control over sporting decisions, I guess maybe in writing too, but also he wants to have control over the sporting decisions by having his guys on the board. INEOS representatives being on the board of directors, therefore will have more control. But it just, again, it's just so complicated and complex, isn't it? And they mention it at the end there. They mention it right at the end, that last sentence. But the exact nature of this arrangement still needs to be worked out. Well, guess what, guys? You've got 4 days to do it. You've got a board meeting on Thursday that you're meant to vote on this. So are we saying that something that could reshape fundamentally Manchester United's future in the years ahead is going to be figured out in 4 days? Not that they haven't been working on it for a while anyway. I'm sure they have. I'm sure they got proposals. But there'll be counter proposals. There'll be things from the Glazers where they go, oh, I don't know about that. There'll be things that INEOS going, oh, I don't know about that too. So the exact nature of how all of this is going to work still needs to be figured out. Now, they say it's also anticipated that Ratcliffe would wish to make his own appointments on the football side, and plans have been discussed. Again, whether or not he's able to do that, we don't know. Some of these names that have been put out there as to who he would want to bring in on the sporting side, one of which has been widely reported anyway, was Paul Mitchell, who's been linked to Manchester United a ton of times even prior to all of this. Obviously, he was linked to United when Ralph Rangnick was the interim manager and he was going to be a consultant, etc., etc. Paul Mitchell, he left his role as Monaco sporting director. He's moved back home. He's actually lives in Manchester. He's thought to be under consideration. Of course, he established a reputation for his recruitment work at Southampton, Spurs, working under Pochettino, RB Leipzig, working with Ralph Rangnick, and has a good relationship with senior INEOS figures. Monaco were top of League One when he left after what was seen as and regarded as a successful transfer window and the building of a new management setup as well. So, of course, he's someone that United have been looking at for a while. Two other names that United reportedly have been looking at and could be under consideration from Sir Jim Ratcliffe are Michael Edwards and Julian Ward. They enjoyed success helping build Liverpool squad under Jurgen Klopp. They have been discussed, but it's unclear if either is open to a Premier League return imminently. What was quite interesting, actually, is United reportedly held talks with Dan Ashworth before he took up his position as Newcastle's sporting director. Obviously, they could still approach him, but why he would come, I don't know. It would cost a significant amount of money. They're very much into their project at the moment. But I think what it does really shine a light on is that you would probably say John Murtough, Manchester United's current director of football director, whatever his title is, looks like his days are probably numbered in his position, because you've got the likes of Paul Mitchell, you've got the likes of Michael Edwards and Julian Ward all being linked to a position that is currently really occupied by John Murtough anyway. And Ratcliffe, wherever he's gone in, they say, has tended to want people in his own positions of power. So it looks like John Murtough probably going to be done during his time at Manchester United. And look, I ain't going to cry a river, about that at all, because John Murtough, I felt like we gave him a chance. 2 summer transfer windows, no real change. Let's be honest, no real change from the Ed Woodward principles, which was chaos, embarrassment, overpaying, underselling as well. No real difference. But even it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult, and I'm almost like reluctant to talk that much about sporting hires like Paul Mitchell, like whoever, because it does just feel like, I don't know, it just feels like a band-aid over like a gaping wound. You've got your arm chopped off, boom, and someone comes in and just goes, let's put a plaster on that, mate. And you go, I'm still without arm here. That's not really fixed my primary problem here. I still need to fix this. And yeah, it's great. We got Paul Mitchell in. Paul Mitchell's come in, and we might operate a little bit better in the transfer market. Cool. What about the debt that's still at the club? Oh, that's still there. What about the owners that we wanted out for 20 years? Oh, they're still there, but they're not in control anymore. No, they're in control. They're still in control. They still got majority of the shares, and they still got majority voting power. Right. But is there a roadmap to get them out? We don't really know. We don't really know if there's a roadmap. That's still being figured out. Gotcha. So, what about the stadium? Well, there's plans. There's plans. Okay, where's the investment coming from? Banks. Right. What does that mean? More debt? Is it against United? Maybe not. Maybe not. It might be against Ineos. Okay. So, it feels like when you're talking about sporting decisions, and don't get me wrong, Manchester United do need a massive overhaul in the sporting department. I think anyone can say and see that United need to overhaul in the sporting department, but it's still massive. There's still massive question marks and massive problems. Magnus says, Owen, why don't you just chill and find until we find more info? We haven't got much. You're presuming a lot right now, which is all negative. Well, I think I'm literally reading what's in front of me, Magnus, in an article written by The Athletic. And the problem is, when there's a lack of information, there's a lot of presumptions that are going on. And I don't think as well, Magnus, I don't think it's presumptive to say that the Glazers are going to stay, and that's a reason to be frustrated. Because I've seen this argument a lot over the last 24 hours on social media. I've seen a lot of people getting angry with people that are upset, which I didn't really expect, to be honest with you. I didn't expect. So people are upset, and there's a lot of sort of sweeping statements involved in all of this. There is people that are saying like, oh, lots of people are just upset because you've not got Qatari oil money. You should all be embarrassed. You should all be embarrassed about that. Now look, some people might be like that. For me, and I can only speak for me, and I can only come on a show like this and share my opinion and my feelings on the matter. For me, it was never about the geographic location of where the money was coming from. It was never about, oh, it's Qatari money, or it was whether about it's oil money, or you want to be state-backed. For me, it was about having the Glazers have nothing to do with Manchester United anymore. That's what it was only ever about. And I've said, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe, if he figured out a way to purchase all of the Glazers shares, and then he just went, I have to purchase some majority shares as well just to get them out, I could get behind that. I really, really could, because I would say, these guys have been here for 2 decades. They've bled the club dry to the point where we had to explore strategic alternatives. And we had to go through rounds of this farcical process that we've lived the last 12 months. I could get behind that. But now we get to the end of this where there's a vote on Thursday, and you still say to yourself, they're still here. They are still here. And they're going to be here for a while still. We don't know when they're going to go. We don't. And they might never go. And I know I say I might, but I think of everything that there's no credit involved in. Well, there's a lot of credit involved in this, but there's no credit involved in this in the sense of, since when have the Glazers earned the right from us Man United fans to sit back and go, wow, let's wait and see what happens. We'll have to wait for more information. Are we really that naive to look at this family that have done what they've done to the biggest football club in the world, and then this happens and we go, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see what they do. Okay, I'm very curious. I mean, you're allowed to. This is the thing. You're allowed to be upset. I've seen a lot of people trying to sort of gatekeep people's emotions over the last few days. People that are upset that the Glazers are sticking around in any capacity, and then people try and say to them, "You're not allowed to be unhappy, or you shouldn't be unhappy. You're not being rational. You're not being rational about the whole thing. You're not being calm about the whole thing." I think you can be pretty rational and pretty calm and read through what I've read through in the last 20 minutes. And still be upset about the matter, And once again, we find ourselves in this situation throughout this whole takeover process where we're shouting at each other. We're going at each other again, as opposed to directing our focus to where it really matters. VK with a super chat says, you lobby the US House Financial Services and Senate banking committees to look into the past year of what could be excessive price swing of the share prices. Billionaires only fear sanctions. Well, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what happens today with the stock price, certainly as well, isn't it? Because, again, it wasn't obviously open over the weekend, wasn't trading. So we'll see indeed what happens. But yeah, to go back to that point, I've seen that people say, well, we'll have to wait for more information. But I think even they're trying to figure out, what the information is. Because they've just said, they're still trying to work out what these agreements even look like. And I think all of the questions that people have been speaking about are perfectly justified questions. As they said, it's somewhat unprecedented. It's somewhat unprecedented to have 25% of a major organization, a major business, and have this much influence as Sir Jim Ratcliffe is really looking for. To have complete and total control over sporting matters and sporting decisions for 25% of the club. That's, again, they're saying that's very unusual. Very, very unusual. But also what's very unusual is paying the excessive premium that he has paid in the first place for a small 25% of the business too. So all of this is strange, which leads to lots of questions. And I think it's not even necessarily of being like a pro Sir Jim or pro Ineos thing. It's even, I think even if you are happy that Qatar, they're not coming in, the Sheikh Jassim didn't think work out. Even if you are happy about that, I still think you're allowed to have these legitimate questions about how is this all going to work? Where is the roadmap involved in all of this? And I understand like some of those details we're not going to get immediately because they're still in contract. They're still finalizing those details. So we're not going to get some of those details until maybe whenever it's announced. I understand that, but you're still allowed to ask the questions during this period of time, because what we're supposed to do, sit and say nothing, fingers on lips. Let's not say anything at all, And I think people that are expecting that, I think that's very naive to assume that United fans are just going to, we'll just wait and see what happens. Because we waited for 12 months. We waited for 12 months throughout this farcical exploration of strategic alternatives process. We waited through briefs. We waited through PR. We waited through false deadlines. We waited through in-the-know accounts. We waited through, papers from different countries. We waited through all of it. We waited through emojis and all this kind of stuff, and we got to where we are now. So I think we're well within our rights to ask questions and say, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? As a fan, I think you're allowed to do that. Amanor says, I reckon Sir Jim Ratcliffe will treat Manchester United purely as a cash cow. We've got Gnome says, it's been a moment for 40 months. Appreciate 40 months of support. Says, I'm still hoping, though probably in vain, for Ineos to get sued by shareholders for being stupid with their money. I mean, I think it's very unlikely, isn't it? I mean, look, for them to Ineos to get involved with Manchester United and possibly have a full takeover at some point, whenever that may be, the shareholders of Ineos might be very happy as well. Nothing drives up a share price more than a merger. So where was I? Well, this is something that, again, this worries me. This has worried me from the beginning. I remember going back to, I think it might have been like January of this year. So I remember doing the show of Marcel in the studio about this. This has always concerned me. So Dave Brailsford, the former head of British Cycling and Ineos Grenadiers, before becoming Ratcliffe's Director of Sport in late 2021, would be expected to head up the sporting operation at United. This worries me a lot, because Sir Dave Brailsford is not a football man. He is not. He had success with British Cycling. And you say success, I mean, if you go back, and if you go back on looking at some of the after effects of some of the projects that he was involved in when it comes to cycling at the moment, just do a Google search of some of the fallout of all that kind of stuff. Do we need to say the stuff with Team Sky all over again, yeah? Because, yeah, it's not very good. I mean, and I know the problem with doping is pretty widespread in cycling as well, but he was complicit in all of that, allegedly. And again, even park that to one side, because, you can care about cycling. I don't, park it to one side and give a shit about cycling. I'm a Man United fan. But why would a cycling person go into Manchester United? How is that going to work? And you could say, well, you never know. There could be a decent transition when it comes to that. That was one of Nice's fans' biggest issues. And I'm not even getting into at the moment with anything of saying like, oh, Nice, they're doing well this season in Liga and blah, blah, blah. Park that to one side. The articles are out there about this, about them saying, why is a cycling guy heading up sports for even a club like Nice, they're going to a football club like Nice, let alone Manchester United, one of the biggest football clubs in the world, a footballing institution, and you could have Sir Dave Brailsford, someone that's got no real record in the sport, is heading up that for Manchester United. How is that going to work? Why? Because he's Ratcliffe's friend. He's Ratcliffe's Director of Sport. Late 2021, he got into that role. Haven't we done? Is this not similar to what we have lived through in the past? Is this not similar through Jobs for Friends? Is this not similar to Ed Woodward's, the CEO of Manchester United? Why? Well, he helped Malcolm Glazer with the buyout back in 2005. Even Richard Arnold, why is he involved? Because guess what? He's been involved with the Glazers for a long time. And all of them, what do they go to? Was it Bristol University? Are we not doing it all again? Is it not exactly the same? And let's be honest, even if it was super successful at Nice, you'd still say it's a bit of a jump to go from Nice, Manchester United. But that was one of their big problems, the Nice fans, was to Dave Brailsford's influence, going, why is this guy with no football experience even being involved in Manchester United, in Nice, let alone, again, United? And that's when you go, but best in class, elite performance. So Dave Brailsford being involved in that. But we've got to wait for more information when it comes to it. Big up VK, by the way. He's gifted 10, count them, not 5, but 10 United View memberships. Big up to VK, long-time mod, supporter, and member of the channel. Let me see if I can see you actually got gifted those memberships as well. I've just got to do some quick scrolling. If I scroll up, am I going to see? Oh, there you go. Wasser, David, Jimmy the United Saviour, AK, Mark, and Jefferson, I believe, were all gifted the memberships by VK. So big up to VK as well. If you are a member now, you've got your access to your badges, your emojis, your exclusive members-only content. You can call in to the full-time view after matches as well. You can have your say. And more episodes of UV Raw actually are coming soon. I spoke to Josh about this the other day. I went, hey, what about those UV Raws? Where are they at the moment? And I can confirm they're coming soon. Because I said, where are they? Because I filmed a load of them. I was in a couple of them. Dayan says, Owen, I'm a Grenada fan, and the team is struggling right now. Also, Brailsford is hardly involved in the cycling team these days. And like I said, that one really, really worries me, and that worried me going back to January, because that was one of the things that was widely expected, is that he was going to be involved, because he's involved in every sporting project that Jim Ratcliffe's involved in. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that he's involved in that, but he is most likely going to be that as well. So yeah. VK says Ineos owns the right to shell gas under Carrington and surrounding area. Why they are keen even for minority shares. Going back to what the Athletic was saying here, this is also quite interesting. It's not just John Murtough that could be looking like he's going to be out of a job too. And actually, by the way, we got nearly 1,500 people watching this morning. Only 142 likes. Only 142 likes. So if you haven't already, click the like button. Let's see if we can get that up to 500 early settings. If you haven't already, click that like button, and be sure to subscribe to bottom right hand corner as we aim for 156,000. But as I mentioned, it's not just John Murtough whose position could be under threat. It could also be Richard Arnold, Manchester United's chief executive. It would come into doubt should Ratcliffe succeed with his proposals. Now, there are a couple of people who are being linked to possibly replace Richard Arnold in his position. One is Jean-Claude Blanc, who is the former Paris Saint-Germain chief executive who joined Ineos in February. He's a potential candidate to step in. Ratcliffe, who toured Old Trafford and the training ground at Carrington in March, is said to feel that United's operation can be more streamlined, given the club employs more than 1,000 staff members. Representatives of Ratcliffe declined to comment, citing confidentiality, but did not deny the 70-year-old is seeking the final say on sporting issues. United, as a PLC, would then need to inform the New York Stock Exchange of any developments. So even that's quite interesting. So you're looking at John Murtough, Richard Arnold could both be out. We spoke about some of the possible replacements for John Murtough. Could possibly be the likes of Paul Mitchell. Possibly those people that used to work for Liverpool. And then Richard Arnold could be the next to go too, with the former Paris Saint-Germain chief executive Jean-Claude Blanc could possibly replace him. But these are all Ineos guys. You know, as they mentioned, these are all people that actively have relationships with Ineos anyway. Jean-Claude Blanc, he joined Ineos in February. So he could be someone that steps in. Now, again, you could say that is an improvement, in the sense of anyone is an improvement on Richard Arnold and John Murtough. They have shown themselves to be incompetent in the roles that they are in. They are not the best in class. But then you would argue, are the people that are going to replace them, are they going to be the best in class, or are they just people that Ineos are kind of in bed with in the first place? These are Ineos people, or are they getting the best in class from around the world? And I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to that one. I really don't. I don't know if I have the answer to, yes, they're an improvement, but are they the best? I don't know. If anyone has, more knowledge of those people, they can let me know in the live chat. I'd be very interested to know. Let's have a look when they've got another super chat here. David says, what is going to happen with the shares? If they convert, or if they all convert to A class, then Sir Jim can get 55% by buying the 30% not owned by the Glazers. There was a question about the shares, actually. That might be in this article or another one. There might be an article that was. I remember reading something about that this morning, suggesting that they were things that people were questioning whether or not there was going to be like new shares created, or if they were buying, how much of the Glazer shares and how much of minority shares were they buying too, all that kind of stuff. That was I think, again, these are valid questions, really, really valid questions to ask as well. So, as I mentioned, this vote is going to be happening Thursday, seemingly. And it's going to involve, obviously, the Glazer families, the 6 Glazer siblings as well. And we'll have to wait and see indeed what happens. The question that lots of people are asking is what would happen next if the vote goes in Ratcliffe's favour or if it fails. And the Athletics say this is a key question, but it's not yet clear. So, there is a suggestion, even though it's an agreement in principle, you never know what could happen over the next few days. This could get to the voting stage, and maybe it doesn't get the full support of the board. I mean, I think if it gets put to the board vote by that point, considering the Glazers have majority voting power, if they want it, then they can get it. So I still expect this to be ratified on Thursday, but I still think there's going to be quite a few developments over the next 3 or 4 days anyway. And we're going to see more details like we have seen when it comes to plans and when it comes to things that Sir Jim Ratcliffe would want to do. And also, look, make no mistake as well, them putting out these plans of people they would want to bring in, people they would want to remove, is to get people on board as well. There will be people that are very upset by the news that's happened over the weekend, and their hope is that if they say we're bringing in Paul Mitchell and we're bringing in this guy who used to be the chief executive at PSG and we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, people go, oh, actually, that's not too bad. Oh yeah, no, I can get behind that. That would be good, but it diverts your attention from the primary problem, which is that the Glazers are still associated and still own and still have the majority of voting control, majority shareholding at Manchester United. That's loud. God, look at that. Oh, beeping the horn. Made me jump. Unbelievable. People. Who does that at 9:37 in the morning? Disgracing a cheat. Oh. Wag the fist at them. Disgrace. It's a news siren, that one. But that's my point. They're trying to get people on board. For me, the only way, because look, I'm not naive to the situation. I'm not naive to the situation, and I realise that this is now the only option. Sheikh Jassim's withdrawn from the situation. There are no other bids on the table for 100% anyway. Yes, there's minority other people that were on the table, but they kind of disappeared. Your Elliots and your Carlyles, they kind of vanished and went very, very quiet. So I realized that this is the only offer that's left. I get that. I totally understand that. And I think the only way that certainly I again speak for myself. The only way that I can get behind any of this now is that if it's a clear roadmap's pointed out to by this date, or this is the plan to buy out the Glazers. This is the plan that's been agreed to by the Glazers. It's not speculatory. It's not hope, because I don't care for it's a foot in the door. It's a foot in the door principle. We've got our foot in the door. It's a start. Well, okay. But what's the plan? What's the plan? Have you got it written down, black and white, that you're going to have the opportunity to buy remaining shares at this point? Have you got it written down that by this date, you're going to have this much percentage of the club? When are you going to turn it to 50? When are you going to turn it to the 69 that they own? When is any of that going to happen? Because I think at this point, if you can tell fans that by this date, we're looking to, we'll hopefully own everything, then I think the fans would go, well, it's not ideal, but it's a start. It's not what a lot of people wanted, because you had an opportunity on the table for 100% of the club. You had an opportunity on the table for a debt-free existence. You had an opportunity for investments in the training ground, the stadium, the academy, the women's team, the entire infrastructure of Manchester United. All of that was on the table, and we didn't get that. Now, again, whether or not that tickled your fancy because of location, because of state-backed, whatever, park that to one side. It's not happening. I guess we have to get over it. But if there's at least a roadmap, then maybe you can get onto that. But I'm done with the sort of speculatory. Well, let's hope. Well, that's what we're looking for. And again, 20 years of this, I just don't think the Glazers would be so willing to throw their hands up and say, oh yeah, by 3 years' time, by 2026, we're more than happy to have sold all of our shareholding to you. I just don't see them being that willing, when particularly those stories came out in the first place that said that, one of the reasons their asking price was so high is because they believe in 3 or 4 years, Manchester United is going to be worth twice as much, 3 times as much, with all of the money that's going into football at the moment. With the Champions League expanding, with the Club World Cup, with the World Cup in the States as well, with all of that kind of stuff, with the Premier League media rights renewal being up. I mean, they're just about to go into a new contract. In a few years' time, they go into another one that might actually exclude any of the broadcasters. They might bring it all in-house. It might completely become a streaming situation that's centralized, and they distribute it. It might be that. And by that point, that's more money for football clubs. It's more money for Manchester United. And by that point, the Glazers might think, we can charge even more. So why would the Glazers, black and white, just agree to, by 2026 we'll be gone? From their point of view, that would be bad business. But by that mindset, they would say that, we're leaving quite a lot of money on the table. That's what they were worried about in the first place, was leaving all of this money on the table. So why would they do that? So I'm not on board for speculation of, they'll try. We got a year of trying. And look where Trying got Ineos in the first place. Trying got Ineos from trying to acquire 69% to 25%. And there's going to have to be a lot of things laid out for me, I speak for myself, to get on board with, getting the Glazers out the club. It might be a case of, in a year's time, we've got different people at executive level. Paul Mitchell's in there, and the sporting side to Manchester United has improved. But it's been proven at this point. That regardless of who you bring in, regardless of what structures you have in place, regardless of managers, regardless of players, regardless of scouting departments, regardless of medical departments, this club cannot thrive with the ownership as it is, with the Glazers being the majority owners and the majority decision makers at Manchester United, which they still will be. Even though they say Ineos has control over sporting matters, they only own 25% of the club. The Glazers will still own the majority. So at any point, if they decide to change their minds or do something, theoretically, they'd be able to. You could say, what about though? Surely there'll be some clauses and things put in. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's not an idiot. Well, even then, nor the Glazers. The Glazers aren't idiots either. They would put situations in there too where they'd be able to overdo these kind of things. Why wouldn't they? I mean, there's one thing you can't call the Glazers, which is bad businessmen. Even if they'd accepted Sheikh Jassim's offer, it'd have been the heist of the century, the heist of the millennium. Are you kidding me? For the amount that they didn't pay for Manchester United, loans and things leveraged, debt leveraged against the club, and they could have turned that into over 6 billion quid. That's what they were looking for. It'd have been one of the business deals of the century, on the millennium of their part, one of the biggest business deals ever. So they're not naive. They're not dumb. Clearly they're not. So the idea, in my opinion, that they would just throw their hands up and say, by 2026 we'll be gone and we'll be happy being gone. Unless those things are put in place for 2026, but they're at an astronomical price, a bit like their total valuation for Manchester United was an astronomical price because they know nobody will do it. They know nobody will put that money in. Their valuation of United, even they knew Qatar wouldn't put it in. So again, all of those questions for me have to be answered, and I don't think there's any wrong with asking those questions as well. Now, we are going to get into the stadium plans in just a second too, because there were also some reports about stadium plans and what have you as well. What else are people saying in the chat at the moment? Callum says, United have never had a decent structure in place. Ineos being in charge of sporting matters would surely allow them to change the structure. This is the hope that people are, and this is the thing that I think people are saying, is that Ineos having control over the sporting matters is better than nothing. It's better than where we were previously. But I still have massive reservations on what confirmations and what's being set in stone to suggest that Ineos would have that total autonomy. I mean, they were saying earlier on that they were going to try and achieve it by having Ineos people on the board of directors. That's what they were looking for. But again, ultimately, the Glazers would still have the ultimate power. They would still have the ultimate power at United. So I still don't know how that's going to work too. What else we got here? Emmanuel says, here's the thing. Only 2 bidders at a £6 billion valuation. How many bidders are they likely to get at a £10 billion valuation? And this process as an example of how the Glazers behave. That's what I'm basically saying when it comes to Ineos's sort of phased or staged buyout that they're looking for from the Glazers, is that realistically in 2 or 3 years, they've already said that that's going to be higher. And Ineos were in a situation where they couldn't afford it now. I mean, that, you know, to bankroll this. And I'm not saying, I think people misconstrue this. When you say Ineos can't afford it or Sir Jim Ratcliffe can't afford it, then people start throwing at you Ineos's revenue, or they start throwing at you Sir Jim Ratcliffe's, you know, net worth and all this kind of stuff. I'm not disputing that Ineos is a very wealthy company and Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a very wealthy man. Like, I'm not doubting that at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that they're not and he's not. What I'm saying is that it's already been widely reported that the money that's gone into paying this 1.5 billion to purchase 25%, and the money that's maybe committed in the future to bankrolling some of these, you know, stadium improvements and training ground improvements, or possibly to buy out the Glazers even more, that's come from JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. That's from loans. So there is an indication maybe that Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Britain's wealthiest man, couldn't compete with that, you know, Sheikh Jassim money. And what's he saying? In like 3 or 4 years' time, when those remaining shares are more expensive than they were now, he's going to have that money in 3 or 4 years' time. Where is that going to come from? And is he even going to be able to reach that amount of money? And who's to suggest too that in 2 or 3 years' time, the Glazers don't increase their valuation even more from what they projected it to be at this time? They could say, in 2 or 3 years' time, we think it's going to be worth this much. We think it's going to be worth that amount of money. They might change their mind in a few years' time. They might go, actually, it's worth way more than that. We were wrong. We want even more money. We've seen that when push comes to shove and there's a consideration for them to leave, what do? They dig their heels in. And they go, unless you're literally going to blow us out of the water with some kind of ridiculous astronomical amount of money, which we know nobody is going to pay, we're not going anywhere. So there might be things written down on paper. There might be things that are, you know, said, by this date, we'll be willing to negotiate. It might just be like just purely negotiation. In 2024, we'll negotiate for this. In 2026, we'll negotiate for that. But as I said, for me, it's very naive to assume that the Glazers would be willing to put down an exit strategy for them that, you know, Ineos could easily do or could feasibly do, because they just wouldn't paint themselves into a corner like that. They never have. They never have painted themselves into a corner that doesn't have 10 million different escape routes, because that's what they did throughout this whole takeover process with the silence and all of these reporters saying that they're very, very patient and they're very, very slow. It moves at a glacial pace. You know, they get what they're looking for. They get the money that they're looking for. And also, look, just take a step back and see the situation for what it is too. Take a step back and look at what's going on. If Ineos as well are in control of sporting decisions, the Glazers, they've won again. Like, they've won again because they're still in control. They still have the majority of Manchester United. They still have the majority of voting rights. If it works out and Manchester United have this great turnaround on the pitch, they start winning things again, they can point to and they can say, look, you know, well done. You know, Ineos, they were in charge of sporting decisions and it worked, but they still reap the rewards. They still reap the profits because it's still theirs to own. If it doesn't work out and Manchester United are even worse, then they can then point to Ineos and go, it's not us. We don't even make those decisions anymore. That's them. That's their choice. You know, that's their decision. And guess what? Whilst that's still going bad, they still do what they've done over the last 12 months, which is what? Make money. They still make money even when it's going bad or it's going good. It's just a difference of a few percentage points. That's it. That's the only difference for me. Anyway. How many likes are we currently on at the moment? We've got still over 1,500 people watching. Only 265 likes. Only 265 likes. If you haven't already, click the like button and be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Mark says, the Sheikh's bid is still on the table, no. Could the board still decide on Qatar? The bid is not on the table, no. They've withdrawn from the process. they have Sheikh Jassim is out of that process. Now, there was a bit of story about the stadium as well. This came from the Times. They kind of wrote a similar piece to The Athletic, sort of suggesting some of the plans that have been sort of speculated about or talked about from the Ineos camp. One of which would be Old Trafford, one of which would be the stadium. So the Times reported that Ineos will explore how to expand a rebuilt Old Trafford into a 90,000 seat stadium if Sir Jim Ratcliffe is successful with his offer to buy a stake in Manchester United. Now again, that's very top line stuff in terms of they're exploring it. Manchester United actually have been exploring how to renovate and expand Old Trafford for the better part of, from my recollection, is at least 2 years, I think it is. 3 years, with the master planner being involved and the 3 options that were put in. And from what I can recall, the 3 options were knock Old Trafford down completely and rebuild it on that plot of land. The other one was renovate, and then the other one was build one on a different plot of land somewhere else. Those plans have been in place. They've been looking at those plans for years. The problem is there's no real expansion potential left to Old Trafford. It's really limited, given the location, given the tracks behind one of the stands, just given how old it is as well. That's why part of the problem was given the land, again, there's just not a lot of room left to do. So they've been looking at those plans for a while. And I think, again, that was partially a bit of a catalyst for this whole process too, is once these developers and once these architects and master planners started to get involved in this process, and they gave it back to Manchester United and said, well, there's not a lot we can do, but this is what we can do, and it would cost this amount. United went, oh, we don't have that money. the Glazers went, we're not going to put that money in, no. So Ineos could explore it, but again, I'd want to see real concrete plans involved in all of that. And it screams to me, honestly, that the reaction from a large amount of people was as they expected, obviously largely negative because the Glazers are sticking around. And for me, it comes across as, somewhat of a unofficial manifesto, because obviously they can't speak publicly yet. So these stories come across as an unofficial manifesto of, these are our plans. We're going to do the stadium. We're going to get rid of Richard Arnold and John Murtough. We're going to bring in Paul Mitchell. We're going to bring in the chief executive from PSG. We're going to do this. We're going to get Ineos people on the board of directors. We're going to do that. And that's good, right? You'll be happy with that. And for me, it kind of feels like, when you're trying to distract a kid or a cat, and you start jingling keys, but you're doing something else in the other direction, and they're focused on the keys. Like that, you go, oh, that's cool. New stadium, we want that. Oh, that's cool. Look, maybe John Murtough and Richard Arnold, they're not going to be involved. That's cool. Whereas over there, it's like, over there, you look at it, you go, oh, actually, no, what those people I thought were leaving, they're still here. Oh, yeah, they are still here. And don't get me wrong, it'd be great to have a new stadium or an updated stadium. It'd be great to have an overhaul on the executive side. And I'm not saying that, Manchester United don't need that, because clearly they do. Obviously they do. We've been crying out for that they need that. But still, it's the bigger, more fundamental issues at United still won't be sorted. And the biggest issue, the most fundamental issue, is that the majority owners would still be around. And as I said earlier on, unless there is a very, very clear and achievable roadmap to them not owning the club, I still am very skeptical about what can actually theoretically change. And I know that people have said this too about, 18 months ago we would have taken this, and that's not untrue. Of course, 18 months ago, if this was the only option on the table, of course we would have taken it. It's naive to say that we wouldn't have. But also, it's naive to say that because that's not what happened. That's not what happened over the last 18 months. If we went through this whole process and that was the only offer on the table, then you would say, look, it is legitimately better than nothing, and it's hope. It's a chance. It's a spark. But it wasn't the only offer on the table. Another offer on the table was for 100% of the club, was a debt-free existence, and ultimately got rid of the owners, got rid of the current owners as they were. And that was my biggest prerogative throughout all of this, was to get rid of the people that have bled us dry and have just run United into the ground for 2 decades. That was the biggest thing. And so I think for people that say, well, 18 months ago you'd have taken this, of course we would. 18 months ago we would have taken that. But for me, that just ignores a lot of context of what has happened over the last 12 months. And that implies that, there weren't other offers on the table, and there weren't other offers that included removing the owners from the club. And as I said, for me, I look at that and I say, well, then you're right to be upset about that. Why wouldn't you be upset by that? So there you go. What's on tap for the rest of the day? Well, I'll tell you what's on tap for the rest of the day. We've got some quite fun content coming. We got some more reaction coming to, obviously, the news of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the 25%, the plans for Ineos, as well as the withdrawal from Sheikh Jassim. There's going to be a really fun video, hopefully dropping later today, which is going to be getting some more reaction from some of the guys here at UV, giving their thoughts, giving their views. So keep an eye out for that too. Obviously, we're going to be getting some more tactical views, hopefully coming out. By the end of the week, football will be back too. It kind of, what's funny actually, we sort of went into that international break on the back of a win, which was cool, but then you kind of remember actually we weren't playing particularly great as well, and how's that going to go for us? We got Sheffield United at the weekend away from home, but it does just feel like all of this stuff on the pitch kind of pales in significance, pales in comparison to what's going on at Manchester United as well at the moment. So there you go. But as I mentioned, I'm sure as well, there's going to be more developing news. There's going to be more breaking news. There's going to be so much more stuff that comes out regarding this as we get closer to Thursday as well, the voting day. So if any of it indeed, if and when it does come out, we'll be live here and we'll be posting stuff here as well. So if you haven't already subscribed, click the notification bells because you might need those notifications as the week rolls on. Anyway, have a great Monday, guys, and I'll speak to you again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.